This weekend marks the 25th anniversary of the fall of Saigon and the end of the war in Vietnam. Matt Lauer is on his way to Vietnam. He'll be reporting Friday from Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon. In Vietnam, they still call it the American War. It's the longest and most controversial war our country has ever fought. More than 2.5 million Americans served in Vietnam. More than 55,000 died there. Recently, we went back with one of the veterans. This is his story, but we think it will speak for so many others.
Xin được chuyến bay tới của hàng không quốc gia Việt Nam. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Da Nang.
Welcome to Da Nang. 450,000 Marines landed here during the war, including Lieutenant John Fears of Norman, Oklahoma. Now, he's back, this time with his son, Captain Christopher Fears, U.S. Marine Corps, to show him what he saw here.
They had lookouts up here and on top of all of these peaks.
What happened to him here, and why, after all these years, he wants to talk about it, man to man.
Once you cross this point and headed south, your adrenaline started kicking in a little bit.
Marine to Marine.
Your entire existence can change in a matter of seconds.
Father to son.
You know, you're so young and you realize that you can die. I was a new lieutenant just trying to learn the routes and stuff, and someone said they spotted some Viet Cong out in the...
It was October 1969 when John Fears left his wife Judy and 14-month-old Chris back in Oklahoma. He was 22, a Rough Rider, commanding a truck company that delivered ammunition on short notice.
All we could do is just hunker down and just fire.
Now the 53-year-old lawyer who represents the poor and the elderly is back in the mud and the noise and the heat as if it were yesterday in his first firefight.
Some RPGs came streaking out of that tree line there and came slamming into the side of the road. They had a 60 mortar. They fired it. It went right over my radio man's head and nearly blew his head off. The only thing that saved us was we had so much firepower going out, and it was only because we had 50 caliber machine guns. And those Marines that got up in those ring mounts on those 50 calibers, that took a lot of guts for them to get up there like that, because they were 15 feet up in the air firing those 50s. And all I remember is I had all this adrenaline just pumping through me, and I just remember I was just so pumped up, it was like I could run through a building or something.
But as it turned out, it wasn't the firefights that stayed with him and ripped up his insides. It was the dead and the dying and the wounded that changed him forever.
And we were coming into this village here. There was a marketplace. It was full of people. It was around noontime, and all of a sudden those explosions started going off. It was just wham, wham, wham. And when we got in here, then there was blood everywhere. It was just bloody. Just so much blood you can't even imagine. There were just people just lying everywhere. They were just all over the place. And I remember reaching down and grabbing this child and trying to stop the bleeding in his leg.
He tried desperately. The child died in his arms. He did his best, and like most who served in Vietnam, this war became very personal, too close to home.
So difficult was that all I could feel was anger, and when I saw him, he was about your age at the time at home. And when I saw him, I saw you.
I knew something happened to him, honestly, all the way up until through college. He never talked about it.
You put up a wall, you have to do that, and I couldn't cry. You know, at the time, you got to function. You know, first of all, you're a Marine, and you do what you have to do, and I was an officer, and I had to function, but it was just this massive, overwhelming sense of anger and rage about what had happened. I put up a psychological wall around me that from then on, nothing was going to get through it, nothing.
He says it took years to take down that wall.
I think we need to look at the map.
Still, there's one piece of Vietnam left to confront.
As for a few numbers, tanks and trucks.
Some Marine deaths he blames on himself. 2 trucks in his convoy, filled with Marines, hit by a command-detonated mine, on the road from LZ Baldy, landing zone Baldy, to LZ Ross. He's searching for the spot where they died.
You want to ask this family?
The farmer invites us in. The two share stories, the Marine lieutenant and the soldier for our old enemy, the Viet Cong.
You proud? When I think back to those days and what would have happened if he and I had encountered each other.
That was 30 years ago. Today, all he wants is to go back to the road where his men were attacked.
You're not allowed because military base, yeah.
Now, the old road is off limits, but the hilltop the Marines were trying to reach that night is not.
It was my call, and so those men died.
It is what he's thought about ever since he left Vietnam, what he could never talk about.
They were good Marines, and they were going back to join their unit down here at Ross. If I said no, I could have said no. I could have said, we're just taking ammo this trip. But the corporal came up to me and asked me if they could go with us. And I said yes. And when we got the radio transmissions that NVA were inside the wire.
You made the decisions that you had to make at the time. You know that there's things are going to happen, and you can only take so many security measures, and you did what you had to do at the time, and you did everything right.
He's waited a long time to hear that. He's waited for another Marine to tell him, but it had to be here.
I had to come back. I had to see it again. I had to touch it. I had to smell the place. I had to feel it. I'd never felt that kind of bond and loyalty to other people since then. Except for your mother and your brother and you, I've never felt that kind of love and sense of belonging than what I felt here with those Marines.
It's a good week to find a Vietnam veteran in your community or even in your family and talk to him about what he went through back then. It's coming up on 8:53. We're back in a moment. This is Today on NBC.